Welcome to the Tales of TIC podcast. Today we are very privileged to welcome Dennis Dorning. Dennis, welcome. Dennis is an
Happy to be here,
experienced,
Anson.
absolutely. Dennis is an experienced sales leader within the environmental TIC space. Most notably, Dennis was the first VP of sales into Montrose Group and was pivotal in the growth and expansion of Enthalpy, as we know, over 8 years. So I said, Dennis, welcome. It's a privilege to have you on.
Absolutely, Anson. Looking forward to it.
Certainly. So, I mean, to start, Dennis, you're quite unique in the sales sense of your background, coming through, on the bench side and having more of a technical background. I mean, for everyone listening, can you explain how you started within the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do believe that I might be a bit unique when it comes to the background of me getting into the world of commercial environmental laboratory, especially into the sales side. But what I think is not unique is how most of us start, which is in a Denny's at 2 a.m. in college. Right? We all start there in our careers. I was after late studying. I was out with some friends, and one of their roommates had come along, and that roommate had brought a brother. And here I am, I don't know, 19 years old, maybe 20 at the most, and I'm whining about money, trying to wonder if I'm going to have to ask mom for more money for groceries next week. And this roommate's brother says, "Well, I work in this environmental laboratory. You want to come in and wash glassware and empty trashes?" And I said, "Well, absolutely. Let me get in there as soon as I possibly can." And so, I'll leave the name of labs out of these just for the sake of I guess just for the sake of doing it. But so I came into a very small laboratory. This was 5 people, and in a small business, any business really, you're going to wear as many hats as you need to wear. However, in the environmental laboratory sector, there of course is educational requirements and DOCs and just different things you have to do to be able to do the work. So I got in, and I'm very inquisitive, and I liked the idea of what's this button do, what's this do, what does that instrument do, what is it telling us, what do these numbers mean? And I would say that by the end of a 5-year stint at this laboratory, and when I started, there was 5 of us. When I left, there was 13 of us. So we had significant growth of not just people, but revenue over that time period. But over that 5-year time period, I would get in the courier van, I would pick up samples, bring them back, log them in, weigh them out, extract them, load them on the instrument. If it was an instrument I had the capability to do any sort of data analysis review on, I would do that. It would go to a second party person to review that data, would then go to QA. I would then act as a project manager, put the report together, review it, make sure historical data was all in check for what the client was looking for, publish the report, send the invoice, and call the customer to ask how everything went.
Wow, full cycle.
Which now we go back to the idea of, well, that's fairly unique in the world of sales. I've hired a lot of salespeople in my career, and very few have the "I was in the courier van to I sent the report and called the client at the end of the day" experience. And what is incredibly beneficial in my career for having that experience is understanding, I mean, the nuts and bolts of the entire environmental laboratory, or really any laboratory process from start to finish. Understanding, proper practice for efficiencies in the business, but also understanding like compliance with state and federal regulations, of which there are many, and understanding, kind of how to navigate work, and then on a sales side, how to push that work through, how to expedite that work, how to rearrange work, and how really ultimately how to make the customer get what they need when they want it. Which of course is ultimately in sales what's really important, because without that, you're not going to have those customers coming back.
Yeah, 100%. I think I said why I mentioned unique. So as you've hit the sort of the full life cycle. Not many salespeople I know have been involved in couriering or project management. So we always say if you have sort of a technical sales individual, they're a unicorn. I think yourself is whatever a unicorn plus would be, Dennis. You've got everything and some extras. So yeah, I said certainly unique. I've not heard of a Denny story yet, but it's certainly. I said certainly. I think it fits your character and. Yeah, it's made you who you are, and I think it's probably why you're so successful, isn't it? As you said, understanding the full life cycle of labs, being able to sell, understanding each role and what maybe clients are looking for, which is yeah, certainly
Yeah,
helpful.
and certainly, and that's never a formal training in you're going to start washing glassware and then you're going to be a VP of sales managing a bunch of people around the country and making sure they're doing the job.
Yeah,
No, there is no college course that takes you from that point A to point Z. But really, it's the ultimate idea of understanding the lab, but then diving into customer service, diving into project management, understanding what people need, why they need it, and why they need something fast, and what that means to us as a company as far as getting more business out of them or gaining their trust. And then taking that experience and then being into the sales function, first inside sales and then into outside sales,
Sure.
before I started doing management of sales. But each one of those steps was kind of a building block, if you will, for
Sure.
really truly understanding ultimately the most important thing, which is the client and how to get the client what they need. And I think that really, if you look at the whole trajectory of my career and how it happened, and totally by accident in many cases, like starting altogether, right? Did not set out to be a VP of sales in the environmental laboratory world, but
No.
each one of those steps kind of got me where I could get a team to rally kind of behind me and the idea of what we're doing as a team and what we're doing for our clients.
Yeah, 100%. I said I think it sort of shaped your progression nicely. I mean, even if we skipped a few years to, as you said, going from that courier to being VP of sales, I think you were poised perfectly, to start growing divisions, growing companies. I mean, your background that maybe I touched on initially, sort of growing the laboratory division at Montrose, now Enthalpy, doing a lot on the M&A side, due diligence. I mean, when you were sort of doing that, how much of your background, I suppose, helped scope and shape, I don't know, what you were looking for in companies doing due diligence? I suppose seeing how the full
Um,
cycle worked, I mean, was that sort of key? And what do you look for when you actually are doing due diligence?
Definitely. And I think a good way to kind of understand or explain that, and again, leaving names of companies out entirely, because we're talking
No,
about the things pre my experience at Montrose Enthalpy, um, and beyond. But the idea that I've worked for very, very, very small laboratories, which operate very differently than the very, very large laboratories I've worked for. And I've heard the customer experience or the expression of that experience from the mindset of the small laboratory, from the large laboratory, from the medium laboratory. And I think one of the things that made, and this was not me alone. Like I did not grow the entire division by myself, and I will take no credit for
sure,
doing that all by myself. I
of
had
course,
my input from a customer service slash sales, customer experience level. But with my background in operations, interestingly enough, I knew things that worked, and the way to kind of uh, structure a laboratory or a business within the laboratory to be more efficient and get the client what they need, such as rush. A lot of clients in the environmental space need expedited results. And sometimes you have labs that aren't geared to necessarily operate where they can kind of drop everything and just do something more quickly.
sure,
So the idea of structuring space in your batches or space in your workflow to add in things that are more important to a client, and thus they will pay three, four, five times more for that data, which of course is not more work. It's
sure,
not a more lengthy extraction. It's not a longer analysis. It's just an expedited way of getting that through your workday. And so, to kind of go back and answer your question, I think what we did really well, when me and the lab director who I'd worked with previously at other companies and a few other people that we'd kind of brought, I don't know, across the pond, you guys know the Steel Panther, the joke rock band in LA?
it's
It's
new
like
to me.
they took all like the best drummer, the best bassist, the best guitarist, and created, and it's kind of a joke band in LA that plays. And but the idea is like we like what's not a joke about this is I think that the Steel Panther idea would be that we created kind of the super group of a laboratory in Southern California. We all came from small labs or big labs or worked together in the past, and people that we really felt identified with what we thought we needed to do to grow and scale that business is who we wanted to work with. And we'll get into culture, I'm sure, in a bit, but that really speaks to culture too. People that fit your culture, your values, people that identify with what your client truly wants at the end of the day. And I think that we took that model initially at Montrose, and that really spread throughout not just the entire laboratory division as we had acquisitions or started organic labs, but also within some of the other business lines. Because as you noted, I was the first salesperson in general at Montrose, so I had a lot of input to the structure, and it looks very different today, I'm sure. But from what I know, there's a lot of that structure that still exists today. Um,
Yeah, certainly.
Hopefully, I answered.
No, you did, and I'm glad you mentioned culture because yeah, working at small labs, working at bigger labs, bigger facilities, bigger organisations, obviously culture shifts massively. There's certain companies that they tend to scale very well and keep that sort of, I don't know, startup mentality, startup feel, which is great. I mean, what do you think I don't know, how do you think your company and maybe where you've worked in the past have sort of best achieved, maintaining that core culture when acquiring, when integrating in smaller labs, and I said, getting everyone on the same page?
I know you have a lot of PE listeners to this podcast. So, before I explain this, I'm not saying that at the end of the day, the PEs must be, given their fair check for the work that they've done in investing, right? But the idea is, as a business and as a unit, your most important culture points are taking care of your clients and taking care of your people. And if you take care of your people and your people are happy and motivated and feel even incentivized to take care of the client, that seems to be what I've seen work best. When your people care enough to care about what your client really needs, your client gets what they need, and then your business expands.
Sure.
And that's where the PEs come in and get their check, right? That's the good part.
Yeah.
But the idea that people that are very much worried about the bottom line or the EBITDA before they're worried about the people, I've seen sometimes it unfortunately is harder to scale or harder to grow, or turnover becomes a big issue. And then of course now you're adding more costs and more maybe client frustration by not having turnaround times. And so really when I think about culture, there's a lot of things you can do. First, you got to set the bar for where you're at. KPIs are very important. I'm sure in your business, you have a number of key performance indicators that you do to kind of monitor the health of your business. Um, and again, I'll take no credit for this, but someone I'd worked for long ago had did a big study or was part of a big study in the environmental laboratory community, asking clients, what is the most important thing out of these five things, right? Price, turnaround time, quality, what have you. And by and large, the answer was turnaround time. Clients cared the most about turnaround time. So when I think about KPIs and where we really need to get on the same page and make sure our culture is all aligned and our values are aligned, is our clients identify as needing their data on time. How do we build a business that makes sure that the client gets what they need on time as a starting point? And if you can build a culture around making sure that that's what's important, then I think that's where you really start to see a culture continued. And then you build the culture in other ways. I'll give you another crazy analogy here.
Sure.
Have you heard of the Savannah bananas?
I've not. I think a lot of this US analogies are getting lost on me, but sure, go ahead.
I didn't want to assume that, but now I kind of am. But so, and I might be dating myself severely. I might have to do an analogy within an analogy, like an Inception type thing. But have you heard of the Harlem Globetrotters?
Yeah, of course, basketball. Yeah.
Okay, so right again, kind of I don't know what's with these joke analogies. It's kind of a joke basketball team it was an entertainment company built with the idea of this could travel around and gain attention and gain fans. Well, the Savannah Bananas are this new thing. It's a baseball team out of Savannah, Georgia. I believe it's Georgia. And the ex-baseball player set out to create a entertainment experience within baseball after his career ended with an injury. This man, his name is Jesse Cole. You guys can look him up. He's a great guy, I do believe. But his company is called Fan First Entertainment. And the entire focal point of his business, and he started with like 10 people coming to games within a little league field. Last weekend, he just sold out back-to-back nights at an NFL stadium with 140 some odd thousand people between two games. And the guy will stick around to the very end. He'll shake everyone's hand. He's the last person to leave. Out of all the fans and everyone, he will shake and sign. And it all comes down to his central point, which is fan first entertainment. Build an experience that the fans want to come for. And he's selling out NFL stadiums, National Football League, if that American didn't.
I got you.
Okay. And again, a silly analogy, but I think really when you think about your business, whatever your business is, right? When you can focus on what's most important at the end of the day for making you money, and in Savannah Bananas, it's butts and seats at a baseball stadium or an NFL stadium, while you have very large teams with 40% attendance within regular Major League Baseball in this country, you start to see, well, maybe if we're putting our fans first or our clients first or our people first, or if we're putting the right thing first and building a culture around that, the sky's the limit on scale and growth. And then, even to an M&A standpoint, it might be a lot easier to buy businesses when your reputation is everyone wants to use you because, my God, you take care of the customer.
100%.
Um, so a lengthy and goofy analogy, Anton, perhaps, but I think it's a really strong one because I think it shows it doesn't matter what your business is. If you're focusing on the right things, you can scale and grow your business in most cases. Probably in all cases, but I'll say most because I don't know every business.
No, I think you're right. I said it doesn't have to be environmental lab testing, even in recruitment. I mean, my director Thomas, he'll say, we have a client first mentality, but uh, you have to start from the people. If you bring a people, a group, it's everyone's on the same culture. You bought into your culture deck, etc. Then the end mission. I mean, you can achieve anything, as you said. Globetrotters, the Savannah Bananas, who I do recognise now. If they're sort of looking to provide as much value, or I say free value, it's not clearly, but provide as much value as possible, then your stock goes up. I'm talking in every sense, financial stock, yes, but also just your reputation in the market, whatever sector. So no, it's quite a fair point. I think certain companies get that wrong, others really get it right. We had Sherry Goods on the podcast talking in private equity, and she said the same. What she looks for and what a lot of companies look for, in the private equity spaces. We look for the people. We do client references to see that, and yeah, people are gold. If you look after people, you get the right culture. I mean, it's magic. You can achieve whatever. So a long response from me as well, but I think some great analogies actually there. That it transfers from industry to industry, not just TIC, not just environmental. It's across many sectors. So
And it's you hit on something in there too, but to acquisitions, right? It also kind of sets a framework for potential acquisitions, and of course, at the end of the day, acquisitions are kind of about a complementary business that would fit within your business or bolster it based upon regional or again tests you may not do that fit in with your client's core business or your core business. And there's a lot of reasons, but there's oftentimes a lot of companies to buy that do something that you want or are in the location that you want.
yeah,
So now if you go back and you start to look at what you care about, your fan first mentality, your client first, your people first mentality,
yeah.
and then you go and start to look at the structure of those businesses and their reputation based on that and aligning your values. I think you're going to find, in most cases, a much better cultural fit when you blend the businesses together, which of course isn't always easy. I don't think.
Yeah, it's not always easy. You're right, but I mean, if you can find someone that has a strength and not necessarily a weakness, but it might be a gap if it's in. I don't know if the company wants to strengthen their PFAS testing, and there's a company that's killing at it, or I said a geography that you want to extend to, then yeah, it makes it a lot easier, a lot more attractive for sure. One thing I wanted to actually switch on to, Dennis, so I said the people first is amazing. A lot of the time when I speak to salespeople, they're the quirky individuals. They all have sort of their own methods, their own go-to sales. For me, in recruitment, it's always nice to listen. I've heard everything from I don't know, seminars, conferences, people in golf. I mean, I'm really curious. Sort of, do you think that this whole shift to remote working and a lot of people maybe not coming in the office or seeing clients enough, we're actually missing out on some of that FaceTime that was common years ago? Because I think golf and a lot of those have almost shifted out. Some guys that know who I'm speaking to that are involved. But yeah, do you think we're really missing on a lot of that FaceTime by just switching to remote? A lot of people not coming in, and those maybe old school sales methods.
Are you trying to get me in trouble by saying if I'm pro team office or pro team remote?
I never.
No, I'm joking with you. It's a really interesting question, and of course, that we had some pretty big world things happen 5 years ago that really taught us a lot of, really evolved this in a new way very quickly. Um, I'm a firm believer that relationship at some level, and I personally, I think a higher level than maybe some others do, relationship never goes away.
No.
The face-to-face interaction never goes away. If you look at what makes a sales team exceptionally good at what they do, they are in their market. And I'm not saying they're having like 20, 30 visits a day, because in our world, that doesn't really make sense. We're having, informed conversations, we're problem solving,
Sure.
but you need to be seeing a few to half dozen clients a day in some respect. to really start to gain their trust and become that expert that can help them solve the problems. Because that's what we do in the ticket industry, right? We're solving problems at the end of the day. We're not vacuums. We're not widgets. We are helping them with a need they have. Um, Golf's always going to be important because there's always going to be a guy that will use you if you take him to that golf course. Lunches will all be important because some people really don't like to bring lunch to the office. Whatever that looks like,
Sure.
that face to face or that meeting where you're actually explaining and solving their problem might be the most important. And I would hope that that's where most business is driven. I don't think that goes away. We also work in an environment where not everyone can work from home. You can't run BMW priced pieces of equipment from your living room.
Sure.
What, you know what I mean? Like on your laptop, you need your techs and your chemists and the bulk of your staff in a laboratory setting and probably almost any TIC setting to be in the office. So we're unique in that way. Assuming that you're gearing that more towards a sales standpoint or maybe project
Yeah.
management standpoint. I've been in a lot of conversations about that, about a hybrid, what makes more sense. I think in a sales world, working remotely is fine as long as you're seeing clients. So whatever that looks like in your business. If you're in an area where you have enough clients to see and working from home so you don't clog up office space makes sense, then I think that can make sense. I think a project management system gets a bit more difficult because in many cases clients do come to the office, and being able to ask if your project manager sit down is important. But could that be some sort of a hybrid? I don't have the best answer for you, Anton. I think it can look very different in different companies and businesses.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me, it's I think my take on it is, don't be wrong. I think the hybrid option works really well. So working remote when there's admin tasks, when it's call based, I
Yeah.
get it. For myself, it works. But even if we're looking at viral tick specifically, I think you do need those times where you sit down if you want to, be in a comfortable environment. Great. Obviously, on the road, face to face, it just has to be there. I know there's people I've spoken to, and they're like, I can do all my sales from, from my home office, etc., which I don't doubt. But for me, even doing it myself, going over to Nashville, I think, the team are going to Boston in our bio division next week. I think it's just invaluable meeting people face to face, partners you may have had for,
Yeah.
months, years, etc. I think that should never go away. And I think after COVID, maybe some people are reliant on that remote aspect. And I think, yeah, hybrid, remote when you need, but traveling, visiting people face to face. I think for sales I think it's a winner.
100% agree. And you touched on something that now sparks something that I think is also really important in this. Years and years ago, I was at a company. We had 5, maybe 6, 7 at the most salespeople in a $15+ million single location laboratory.
So,
And out of those salespeople, none of them came in the office every week. They did go see clients every week,
yeah,
but they didn't come into the office. And I was told by numerous project managers that, wow, you're the only one that comes in and checks in on us and the clients and how everything's going. And so one thing that I kind of instilled in all my staff when I got to the managerial level was, and again, if you're remote to the lab, this doesn't make sense. Okay. But again, in general, uh, you should be in the laboratory one day a week for half a day. And you should be meeting with your lab directors, your project managers, your group leads. Hey, how's it going? All the work I'm burdening your staff with, how is that going? Building rapport, building a relationship. And of course, on the sales side, that becomes very important too, because we're needy on sales, right? We want what we want. I want my client to get their data now,
yeah,
right? But when you have a good rapport with the operations team and a really solid working relationship, you can call, and I'm not saying ask for favors like you're doing anything wrong, but like, hey, is there any way you could maybe put this one out first if you have a chance? Or you have that ability to kind of work together to help get, again, ultimately get the client what they want. So not just from the standpoint of clients, but the internal office relationship, I think you were hitting on.
yeah.
uh, Building those healthy relationships, working relationships within an office is really important, and again drives ultimately culture, I think.
No, I agree. It's probably something that I think a lot of people actually forget is, yeah, visiting clients, but yeah, your own team. As I said, certain industries, consulting sector, I get, going in the office, having that camaraderie is great. But as you said, in a lab setting, actually knowing your, lab managers, your bench chemists, etc., it's, I think, valuable. As you said, if you need a favor, yeah, but I think in general,
Yeah.
you're a cohesive unit.
Yep.
You're all working towards the same goal. So, no, quite a valid point, actually, Dennis. I appreciate that input. I mean, if we are looking at the environmental sector as well, this is a little bit of a shift in conversation, I guess. There's been a lot of talk around, if it's PFAS, if it's different avenues the industry's going with. I won't get political with what's happening in the US, but I mean, what have you particularly seen in the market with regards to the enviro sector, and where do you think it's shifting to, alongside
So
on PFAS?
you guys in the UK have PFAS issues?
I think everywhere's got PFAS issues.
Oh, that was a total joke. No, I mean it's funny. So PFAS. Okay, when you want to figure out where people are going, start to look at where people are putting their money.
Yeah.
And if you look at every environmental consultant, at least in America, in every single environmental consultant's website, or at least ENR top 200 environmental consultants website, you're going to see PFAS banners, PFAS experts, PFAS webinars, PFAS remediation that is the best technology that no one else has. You're going to see it's just a marketing blitz of PFAS on your LinkedIn, on your newsletters. It's all PFAS all day, all the time. It is by far the hottest topic that we've seen since benzene in the early 90s, late 80s. And again, to the benzene point, when benzene hit the scene, I think it was in the 70s that it became officially regulated by EPA, but it wasn't really enforced or highly regulated in air or anything else until late 80s, early 90s. There were like 3 labs doing benzene analysis in the States. Do not fact check me on that. I can't say that it was a 3.
Thank you, word.
But it was, for a turn of phrase, there's like a few doing benzene.
Sure.
Fast forward to the early 2000s, if you didn't analyze for benzene, you're not even a laboratory. What are you? We all do benzene: water, soil, air, certainly in building materials, or all kinds of different matrices. So it took benzene 25 years to get to that point. I think PFAS is following that same trajectory of, oh my gosh, this is the hottest thing to hit the scene. It's everywhere. And by the way, the microscope that we got out to look at PFAS is quite a bit bigger than the one we had the technology for back at benzene. So when we started looking for PFAS with a microscope this big, are we surprised we found it everywhere?
Yeah.
Drinking water systems, wastewater systems, county streams, lakes, people's blood, right?
I saw that. Chris Hansen, yeah.
Cosmetics, pizza boxes, beer. I just saw a new study about beer. I've been seeing it for 5 years, but a new study came up last week about beer and how every beer we drink is PFAS ridden. It's just the amount of data we have and the microscope of which to look at the level of that data is just insane compared to anything we've seen. So it's not surprising to me that you have something. And again, it's incredibly toxic, we believe. That is the understanding. So it's not surprising to me that is the biggest movement in environmental. And again, the UK joke about you guys not having PFAS is a total joke. Obviously, I mean, there's countries like Australia that are dealing with some pretty significant issues. Certainly America, certainly the UK. It's international, and a lot of that has to do with it's not necessarily in drinking water systems in remote areas per se, but it certainly is in a lot of the products that have been shipped worldwide. In almost any idea of a product would fit into that category.
Yeah.
And the idea that there's replacement products, but now what's in those replacement products? Are those just as bad, if not worse? Because we haven't figured out what the contamination levels in certain areas are of the replacement products. So rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. This is definitely, I'm not going to say the future for the rest of the world's life, but it is for the foreseeable future. When I would present at conferences and I would present on PFAS, I would usually start by saying, just to be clear, we're all going to retire on PFAS, right? Okay, cool, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because that is where all the business in environmental in many countries is going to be kind of geared towards, or where the companies are going to be spending their money on, because that's one of the biggest concerns, I think, of the environmental community internationally.
Yeah, but we keep saying internally, it's almost getting into PFAS now is almost like getting into Bitcoin, isn't it? And it's 2010, etc.
I like that. Yep.
It's a hot commodity, exactly. But I think the issue that I think a lot of companies are going to have now is almost getting into PFAS as an afterthought. You have your big TIC players, that have been in it for several years and have really consolidated. Back to the M&A point, the integrating and they're acquiring companies to sort of increase the PFAS
Yep.
capability. I think a lot of smaller labs may get left behind in the sense that they're not growing at the same rate with regards to PFAS, and it might just consolidate the market even more to the larger players. So yeah,
100% agree.
yeah. So I think you're right. For the next God knows how many years, I think PFAS is going to be the big talking point in environmental testing. I don't know what's going to come next. Who knows? But I think PFAS for a long time for sure.
And not that all environmental consultant, forward-facing companies are in the TIC world, but they are involved with the TIC world, even if they're not personally involved. The idea that whether it's the TIC world or the consultant world, everyone's racing for the technology patents, right? So that ultimately is going to drive a big aspect of M&A potential. Now, will there be one ultimate solution for remediation, or will there be 10? Or will there be 30? I don't know. I don't have those answers. I think some technologies are better than others, but you start to look at not just the laboratories that have the instruments to analyze the lion's share of samples that are needed in even a small region,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, we don't have enough laboratories, in my opinion, to analyze the number of PFAS samples. We don't have American-based laboratories with the equipment to meet the needs of the demand of the American market as it is.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing all the labs that you've heard of and know and love in the Americas are all trying to add resources and people and PFAS and LCM SMS technologies as quickly as they can. But what happens as that starts to consolidate? But then now there's remediation technologies that consolidate. That really, again, from the M&A PE world, now it changes the landscape significantly of who is important to look at, maybe an acquisition with.
Sure. I think for me, I mean, from when you came into the industry, Dennis, to maybe now, do you think that just, I said, the potential and what we're seeing, as you said, of its newer equipment, technology, increasing demand, I mean, do you think that's going to spark, I don't know, the next generation of people in college looking to, I don't want to say specialize in PFAS, engineers looking to get ahead and sort of get their foot in? Do you think it's going to drive a lot of traffic to the enviro space, or even if it's consulting, testing, I suppose everything related?
Very quick answer on this one. Yes. Now,
Nice.
a way longer answer to that.
Yeah, it was loaded.
That I won't go through all of, but I mean, some key, are we ever going to decide on a technology for from the TIC side of things and for analysis? Are we going to decide on reporting limits or MCLs? Will lawsuits take so long that there's not enough of a drive for a certain type of chemist with a certain background skill set on a certain piece of instrumentation? I think we're getting a lot closer than we were 5-10 years ago. And I know we are.
Mm-hmm.
But again, now you go back to the remediation side. Are we going to decide on a technology or 5 or 10? Or, I think a lot of those answers are ultimately going to drive, are you going to see your local California university start to have PFAS driven degrees?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I mean, could.
Yeah.
We've seen stranger degrees out of California schools, I think.
I think there's a Taylor Swift degree going away somewhere in the US. So yeah, I think you're right. PFAS isn't that. Yeah, PFAS wouldn't be that strange, but no, it's certainly exciting. I said, I think people like yourself, Dennis, people in the labs, etc., the consulting side, people dealing with remediation. Certainly a hot topic. As you said, it's going to retire people. I think it's going to be a great point to get in. And I said, if it, introduce a new generation into the sector, then, I mean, it's what we want, as you said, to deal with these topics, but just to get interest, I think, into, the testing space, into chemistry and into environmental. So it's not going to be detrimental. Well, I mean, the PFAS might, but the interest won't.
And the last thing I'll kind of say too on that on the PFAS point is, we've seen, especially in this country and certainly other countries, political shifts in importance of environmental concerns, right? One administration may have strong feelings here, but another administration has strong feelings here and things. And well, at least the way that, that America is with the states, and the states could have potentially different regulations. Compliance. So you think about the TIC world, compliance by and large will not go away I'm not going to say recession proof because that gets into a whole nother world of economics and everything else, but it's certainly environmental compliance proof ish. PFAS. I mean, it's not going away based upon any sort of big political shift of ideas.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that also answers to it's here, it's strong, it's not going away. Um, the forever chemicals might absolutely have to be tested forever.
Yeah. No, no, it's a great point. They're going to have to be tested forever, but no, I agree with everything you said, and I think that's actually a great comment and a great way to finish. Actually, Dennis, it's a great little bomb. So, listen, very very grateful for having you on the podcast. Some great comments, some great analogies that I'm probably going to start using. I think a lot of people searching Savannah bananas after this as well. So, yeah, thank you for your time. I said I appreciate all your comments and. Yeah, exciting industry that we're in. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Anton. I appreciate the time, and yeah, man, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.